All right, we are on air. It is Thursday, October 4th, and this is a weekly developer check-in for Backdrop CMS. Starting off at the top of the meeting, I want to thank Graham72 for all his fantastic work on Backdrop Contrib. He's got another contributed project release this week, Beauty Tips API. So if anyone's used to using Beauty Tips on 777, that's now available for Backdrop. So thanks, Graham, for working on that. And usually Nate would be here to do our rundown of Backdrop core issues, but he's got another meeting at the same time today. So I don't know, Jeff, if you wanted to run through these, if you would rather I do it. But Nate's already been through the agenda and added little updates to each issue. Jeff doesn't want me to. Jeff doesn't.
You can do it.
Okay. You're like, I don't want to do it. All right. So starting for Backdrop 1.11.0, it looks like there are no critical updates that would require us waiting on pushing that release to upstream, so we can go ahead and do that. I know on my agenda, I think is the Docker image, but any of the other upstreams like Pantheon or Platform are probably ready to get updated as well. For Backdrop 1.11.1, we are currently scheduling a tentative release date for next Wednesday, October 10th. So Jeff, I'm not sure if you're around next Wednesday, but that is when we will be doing our next bug fix release. And that will include, hopefully, a couple predefined color schemes for basis. There's issue 3209 where that's getting reviewed. There's a pull request there. I think it looks pretty close. I added some feedback on that where we should probably run the colors through an accessibility checker to make sure that when we change font color and background color, we don't end up with, we do end up with enough contrast. I don't know what the opposite of that would be. So just to make sure that everyone can read it clearly. But that looks really good. It's great that we've got some default color schemes going in there. The next issue is our color preview tool. So when you're changing colors in Basis, if you're in Safari, the previewer is inconsistently working. And so there's an issue for that, 3295. I think there's some version information there for which version of Safari that's presenting an issue on. So we'll just need to use Browser Stack or something to confirm that that's an issue. And if so, figure out what a solution might be for it. Again, it's not mission critical, but it would be great if we could get that fixed by next Wednesday. Anyone is curious about what other issues we have going on in 1.11.1? There should be a milestone on backdropcms.org queue, or sorry, Backdrop CMS issues queue to track that. Anything we can get fixed by then will be great. If not, it'll just get bumped to the next bug fix release. All right, so for Backdrop 1.12, this is our next minor release. It's scheduled to come out on January 15th, 2019, which will be Backdrop's 4th birthday. Is that right? 15, 16, 17, yeah. We've got a couple of interesting issues on the horizon around core updates. In this last version of Backdrop, we put in a core update button, but it is currently disabled. There's no user interface for it. So for the next release, we want to turn on that user interface so people can go ahead and use the button to update their sites. It looks like we haven't had any progress since last week, but there is a pull request that's getting worked on. I don't know, Jeff, if you have any updates on that one for us.
No recent updates. There is I did make a little script to make it a little easier to test. It's kind of a pain in the neck test, but the script should make it so people could just kind of run one thing and get all the things they need to get basically get an outdated version of Backdrop, and then push the buttons you need to push to make things update.
Great. Is there an issue number for that, or is it just on the 2018 issue?
I believe it's 414.
Okay. I'm just gonna plop that in there. Okay, just a couple other things we're working on, like package signing. This is something we'll need to get done before we do automatic updates. It would be great if we could get it done before manual updates, but I don't think that's a necessity. And then another part of the core update issue is to deprecate authorize.php. It looks like we have a pull request where most of the authorization has been removed, but there's also a file transfer system that was previously used only by the update mechanisms that we can also remove to get some more cruft out of core. So that'll probably be a follow-up issue to get that out there, and that also won't be required to do by 112. We could probably get that done at any time after the deprecation of authorize.php goes in there. Actually, that might have to be another follow-up that comes much later, because if we're using the file transfer system for something that's deprecated, it's entirely possible there are other things that are using it while it's deprecated, so it probably shouldn't be removed until authorize.php is removed entirely. But we could do some cleanup. All right, so that's it for core updates. We have another issue. One of our longest standing high priority issues is issue number 37 for tags for modules. There is a pull request on that issue. It does need review and feedback. So just some people to test the sandbox, try the modules page, see if the addition of tags makes sense, see if the tags that were added make sense to you to try and find particular modules. That issue really just includes a new setting on the info file for all core modules that will help us filter the module list on the modules page. But more importantly, those tags for modules will also be used on backdropcms.org when you're searching for modules and in your module installer. So even though the change to the modules page is not significant, I think there will be a significant change to the project installer. So that change has not been implemented yet. This is just the first step, but it does pave the way for better improvements down the road. Okay. Next up, this is one of my favorites. There's a contrib module for Drupal called options element that improves the process of defining different options for select lists, checkboxes, radio buttons. But right now there's just a massive text field and it makes you type in a key in a vertical pipe and then a value. What this does is it actually transforms that massive text field into a bunch of individual fields where you can define every item on an individual row, and if you want to define the keys, it gives you a specific ability to do that. It gives you the ability to automatically determine the keys based on the strings. It's a lot more of an intuitive interface than just a giant text area. And what we're working on is taking that options element module and putting it directly in core for all fields in Backdrop. So if you create a field that would be a select list, checkboxes, or radio options, it would include this form element, and this form element would also then apply to web form. So the Drupal 7 contrib module only works for web form, and this is expanding it to work for core fields as well in Backdrop. So that's issue 1005. It looks like there is a pull request that was recently updated, and it just needs more reviewing. So if anyone wants to take a look at that sandbox, I think that's going to be a huge usability improvement. I'm really looking forward to it getting it. Next issue is something that we have long identified as being necessary for Backdrop's file system, and this is fieldable file types. So for example, if you wanted to have an image that would have a photographer credit and caption on it, and maybe a PDF that might have a date and author field. Those fields are different. We need to be able to distinguish the difference between a PDF and an image and add those different fields to each one. So that's something that we've been working on for a while. It had been slated for a couple of earlier core minor releases, never got done and got bumped. Now we have a version that's done. This is, again, is issue 2632. It would be great if we could get a bunch more review on that before it gets merged, but it does look like it's definitely going to make it for 112. So this helps us get a little closer to the including file entity, which was a contrib module in Drupal 7 and core for Backdrop. It also gets us a little closer to what media provides for Drupal 7. So it'll help us flesh out our media handling in Backdrop to get us a little closer to an ideal user experience. And there's a ton of other issues that are also slated for Backdrop 112. we only talk about the highest priority issues in this meeting, but if you're curious about other stuff that we've got in the queue, there is a milestone for 112 on GitHub. Everyone is welcome to check out. And if anyone wants to know what we're working on longer term, we do have a roadmap page on backdropcms.org. It's backdropcms.org/roadmap. And we should have a rough outline of features that we want included in the next version there, as well as stuff that went into every previous version. So yeah, it's not super nailed down yet, because obviously people can still have great ideas between now and January, and we'll put those in if we can, but general guideline is there. All right, that's all I have for Backdrop Core. If there isn't anything from anyone else, we can move on to Backdrop for Good. I don't know if you have a quick update for us here, Jeff. Last we spoke about it, looked like it was moving along nicely. There is an issue queue on GitHub. Anyone who has time to contribute to that project is welcome to participate in. Grab an issue, assign it to yourself, file a pull request. Okay. Next up, and probably our most exciting discussion for today, under the general discussion section, we have a bullet here to talk about contrib projects. The title is Follow WordPress-like Policies, but this is specifically relating to licensing for contrib projects. So Kevin, I don't know if you want to give a little introduction here.
Well, hopefully it's not that exciting, because I don't think there's as much controversy here as there has been in Drupal regarding this. So the Drupal policy is to remain compatible with GPL2 for everything hosted from Drupal.org, from core to contrib to distributions. And at the distribution level, this has always been very problematic, because there's a lot of common modules that require non-GPL2 compatible code to be added as an additional step. And with Drupal 8 and Composer, that becomes a lot easier to install as part of the. It isn't a download this specific release from here and upload it into your libraries folder. It's all happening the same way that builds are happening. So the conversation is shifted a bit, that with distributions, the ability to pre-package all of the things someone would want to use becomes problematic, because you can't include like the AMP library from Google is licensed as Apache 2, and so you can't include that, so you can't actually enable that functionality by default in a distribution. You can allow people to add it themselves, and that's your right under the GPL2 or later clause, but Drupal as an organization has decided to keep everything distributed from Drupal.org licensed compatible with GPL2. WordPress does not do that at all. You'll find all kinds of GPL3 only and Apache 2 code in their modules, and their modules are the standard install process is a lot more like what Backdrop expects, where someone downloads the project from GitHub or from WordPress and then uploads it into their site, and the hope is that all of the pieces come with the initial download, so it's not a big hassle to go and find additional things and get those uploaded to the right places. So this ties into some of the conversations about HAX and Elementor as alternative editing interfaces. Elementor requires an Apache 2 licensed library that is included and can be installed for WordPress from the UI, but for Drupal it has to be a multi-step install, and I'm guessing for Backdrop you would want it to be an easier install process. So there's definitely like a lot of documentation regarding this not being illegal, not being a violation of the GPL, and I completely understand keeping Backdrop Core GPL2 compatible to remain with the same license as Drupal. But for the contrib, it seems like it would make more sense to adopt WordPress as policies regarding licensing than stick with Drupal's. So I posted the issue. Everyone who's commented has been in favor of clarifying that and I don't really know if there's anything else needed for the PMC as far as background information on it. It seems less controversial in 2018 than when we originally started these conversations with Drupal 5-6 years ago. So if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I don't know what else to add.
Yeah, I think that looks great. I did want to mention that we are running into this limitation right now on one contrib project. The scroll reel project has a contrib library that's currently bundled that's GPL2 compatible, but the next version of that library will not be GPL2 compatible. And so if we want the next version of the backdrop module to contain the latest version of the library, we are going to run into this licensing conflict. And there's also documentation in a couple of different places that contradicts itself. So in some places we say, choose whatever license you want, GPL2 or 3 for your contrib project. And then in other places we say, you must install the GPL2 license file. So I think this might be something we already thought about and just haven't made clear to everybody what the decision is on how to license contrib projects. And regardless what the decision is, that needs to be made clear, number one. But number two, I think now that we have some real world scenarios where we can see how it'll affect us to make a more restrictive licensing requirement here, it will shed some light on, you know, what the kind of benefits we could get from loosening our restrictions in terms of keeping things up to date with the rest of the world and continuing to bundle libraries and make it easier for our users to install things. So
you can still require that the PHP written for the module be licensed as GPL2. It's the distribution clause, and this is where Drupal didn't want to cut hairs regarding JavaScript. A lot of JavaScript doesn't even have to be open source licensed to be packaged and distributed with GPL2 because it only runs on the client side. There's no cross memory resource utilization, and it doesn't even use Drupal's APIs. And so the decision in the Drupal community was we didn't have the resources to try to vet all of these requests as to how the JavaScript is actually used. So we just had a blanket statement across the board for all JavaScript must also, included in a module, must also follow these rules. But you try to be more granular with the difference between distribution and what the PHP people are writing. So that is another option. It is a confusing option, and one that WordPress chose not to go with. So yeah. I think WordPress, the activity in contrib and the lack of barriers for people to get started and get things out in front of other users and share their code freely, speaks a lot for that approach working well versus Drupal's previous PAR requirements and then these very restrictive licensing requirements kind of hindering the innovation that happens at the contrib layer.
Yeah, that's also a great point. So where we are with this right now, I opened a issue for the PMC to review Kevin's issue, which if those of you are interested is issue number 294 in the backdrop contrib queue. But I think that we should get a decision quickly and then hopefully clarify all the documentation about how you can license your contrib project so that it's not contradicting itself in two different places. Is there anything else we should talk about today that wasn't on the agenda? Anything urgent?
Well, I posted a sneak preview of what Alex has been working on for us to leverage the hidden path nodes. Again, I'm super excited about this. But I'm not going to ruin he's put a lot of work into this, so I'm not going to spill everything he's been working on. But that's definitely something to look forward to. And we shifted gears a bit after getting our initial blog install up and running, and haven't been adding the content to that, but we hope to get that done the next week or so. And then we should put ourselves on whatever list there is to be nagged and nudged to actually create content. So if there's a sign up for people to create content as far as a content schedule, let us know and
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
Happy to have people encourage us to do what we already said we were going to do.
Are you going to be at Bad Camp, Kevin?
I'm not. Alex is. A couple of us are going out to the NGINX conference to look at their controller project, and unfortunately those overlapped. But Alex will be out there.
Okay. Well, if Alex is out here, maybe he'll be able to show us a demo that he's been working on. So it's pretty cool.
Yep.
All right. Well, if no one has anything else urgent. Oh, I know, Larry, you just joined. I didn't know if you had any comments. We got all the way down to the open Q&A section. So
yeah, I was just gonna catch what I could.
all right. I think the big takeaway for today is that the PMC has to review the issue for licensing and contrib, just to make sure that that's clarified and hopefully is open and as least roadblocky as possible for our community. But yeah, I think everything else is sort of as expected this week. We do, again, a reminder, we are going to have a bug fix release next Wednesday, October 10th. So.
Excellent.
Otherwise, that's all I have for today. So thank you guys for joining. Sorry Nate couldn't be here. I was hoping he would pop in at the end of the meeting, but this one went kind of quick. So I suppose we'll see you next week, if not before.
All right. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.